All right, welcome back to Custer's Last Stand, 150-year commemoration solitaire board game. We're ready to do turn number 3. We can do a little bit of cleanup before we get started. All the Indians that can activate have activated. There's no possibility that these discs are going to enter the game. So we'll just get them out of the way so there's no confusion. Also, because some of the other leaders have been eliminated, we're not going to need those extra yellow discs for the being exhausted. So one thing I noticed when I went back and reviewed is I had been making a mistake, and there's really no excuse for that, but the explanation is it's a rule I added recently, and I even put a reminder to myself in the player's aid. That concerns an additional disadvantage to being below this line on the cohesion track when you're firing. And it's probably easier to explain when I actually get to that point. So there have been units probably on both sides that have fired and not had that dice effect apply to them. But we're going to push on and do it right going forward. So just be aware, if you got this far, there were probably some firing combats done on the earlier turns that might have gone a little bit differently. Excuse me. Okay, now we're going to turn over the first leader. That leader is Custer. So Custer, you look at the beginning of your turn, and Custer is not to the left of that line. He's at 6 or better, so he's going to not have to worry about that penalty of the extra dice, which I'll explain when he fires, even though he's now going below the line. So, he's going to fire at Gaul. He's going to roll the 5 dice like normal. We get 2 4s. We get no good numbers. In fact, we get a pair of 2s, which is bad. So Custer is going to re-roll these. And we got a 5. We got a 4. And I'm just going to go ahead and use this last Custer luck token to do the dice manipulation and change this 2 to a 5. And that gives us a pair. And then Gaul loses this. Now Custer has no Custer luck counters left in the game. I'm gonna turn over the next one. Okay, it's Lame White Man. Before I go on, almost forgot to do this. So Custer is gonna check to see if he's exhausted. He gets a 2, he's not exhausted. Now we'll go to Lame White Man, turn over his counter. He can't charge this hill because it would be 4 again. If he were in here, it would be 4 to 6 discs of the 2 colors, and you cannot do that if you're in the minority. So he will have to stand back here and fire from down here. So he not only doesn't get to add the extra dice for a charge, because this hill has a defense value. So on here, minus 2d6, what that means is when he fires, this is Indians against a couple different positions. So when the Indians are shooting and the defenders are on some locations like Ware Peak or Last Stand Hill, there's a certain number of dice. So there's 2 dice that will not be included. So the best Lame White Man can do is what he can do with the rolling 3 dice. He's going to go against Reno. So Lame White Man also, now he is starting below this line. So I'm going to go ahead and roll the dice and then explain how this works. Okay, so there's no 4s that are locked, but you look at any 3 2s or 1, and you take the highest of those numbers. Well, there's a 3, so there's not a 2 or 1. But if this was a 1, it would still take the 3, the highest number, and that gets locked. So we have a 6, and then Lame White Man will then try and roll this to get a 6. We get a 1. Now that only occurs on the first roll, so there's no additional locking. We're going to go ahead and roll. It's desperate times. Try and save the villagers. Okay, we got a 5. We'll go again. We got a 6. Okay. So had I rolled like a 3 and stopped, I mean, then I would have the consequences. So it just, there's an extra, it increases the chances that you're going to get stuck with these bad numbers if you're shooting when you're below that line. Okay, so we got the pair of 6, so Reno loses this. And then we are below, we're staying below this that line on the cohesion track, so we're going to roll to see whether or not lame white man is exhausted. We get a 2, that is good enough to keep him from receiving the exhaustion cube. Okay, now we turn over this one. We have Yates. Yates is here, so again, he won't have that additional penalty. This to just do any kind of firing at all against Gaul. We get a 6 and a 5. We get a 4 that's locked. We have a pair of 2s. I'm going to break those up and try and get 5s or 6s. Roll again. Got another 4 that's locked. I'm going to roll. Come on. Oh. Well, we could do what we did in the past. We're going to go ahead and roll this one, hoping to get the 6. And we did not. Okay, so now we have to see if Yates is exhausted. He's not exhausted. That's a miracle. But we didn't take any units out, and there's nothing that Yates will be able to do except the regrouping action next turn anyway. Okay, turning over the next one, we have Benteen. Benteen can only do the regrouping action because he is exhausted. So Benteen goes and adds 3. Now, because he's exhausted, I take another, he's not automatically removing this disc. I would if it had crossed back over the line, but because he's still to the left of the line, we're going to roll, and he may continue to stay exhausted. And in fact, he is still exhausted because I rolled a number higher than the level 4 is at. So this stays here, but next time when he regroups, it'll take up to here, and then he'll automatically remove the disc. Okay, now we take, so that was all of Benteen, and then Gaul will roll, and he will roll against Yates. So first we see that doesn't begin this side of the thing, so he's not going to have the extra number 3 2s and 1s that are frozen. We get a pair of 5s against Yates. We get a 4 that's locked. We get another 5, but then we get a 4 that's locked. So Yates will lose this disc, and Gaul now must roll on to see if he's exhausted. A 1, 2, 3, he is not. A 6, he is. So we put the exhaustion cube on here, and then we roll for Reno. Reno will roll. We do not, so Reno is not going to fire. Reno is just going to do a regrouping, because if I were to roll the die, because he's starting here, we would have a 3, 2, or 1 that is locked. Plus, he wouldn't even be able to do another reroll because he would be at the lowest level. So there's too great a chance that he's going to get stuck with a pair of 3, 2s, or 1s and end up being eliminated. So what we will do is we will just go 1, 2, 3. Now, he does not have to roll. He's not exhausted, so he doesn't have to do an exhaustion check. He's just bettered. He gave himself some wiggle room for the future. So that is what Reno has done, and that concludes this turn. So we would move this, getting ready to do turn number 4, and all of these leaders get flipped back over and scrambled up.